might note that we have received written notice of proxy. Mayor Padilla was not able to be here this evening, so he has granted to Councilwoman Ortiz his proxy for voting purposes. Also, Councilmember Spencer Duncan was not able to be here this evening, and he's granted to Councilwoman Karen Hiller his proxy for voting purposes. And note that before we begin the meeting. With that being noted, our first item.
Item 1, roll call. Commissioners Cook,
Present.
Mays,
Here.
Rippon,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Valdivia Alcala,
Here.
Council Members Banks,
Here.
Hiller,
Here.
Ortiz,
Here.
Kale, Miller, and Dobler.
Would note that we do have a quorum for the purpose of the meeting this evening. Our first item, or next item.
Item 3A, approval of the February 14th, 2024 JEDO board meeting minutes.
The minutes of the February 14, 2024 meeting are contained within your packet. Are there any questions, changes, or is there a motion? Note a motion to approve by Deputy Mayor Valdivia Alcala. Is there a second?
That wasn't it. It was Councilwoman Ortiz.
Ortiz.
I apologize. No, Councilwoman Ortiz has made the motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilwoman Hiller. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioners Cook,
Yes.
Mays,
Yes.
Rippon,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcala,
Yes.
Councilmember Banks,
Yes.
Duncan.
Yes.
Sorry. Sorry about that. And Ortiz.
Yeah.
It shows that it passes. Our next item.
Okay. Item 3B, approval of incentive funding for Project Oriole.
Hello. So as this is the first project for that we're presenting to some new JEDO members, I thought I'd provide a little more detail this time. Our current incentive guidelines are set in place by Topeka and our board of directors. They align with the metrics in our community strategy and ensure that we grow our economy and also follow the norms for local economic development projects nationally. These projects are in the early incentive process, which is why we present them with a code name. Confidentiality is really important to these companies during this time and will remain under the code name during the whole incentive process. If we receive approval, we will develop a contract agreement with the company and present that at a later JEDO meeting, and at that time the company will be announced. These projects tonight follow the incentive guidelines and have been previously approved, and all the incentives are performance-based in structure, and they are also paid out as earned over a period of 5 years. Additionally, all the details of the proposed incentives for these projects have been outlined and included in your packet tonight. So the first is Project Oriole. This is a local manufacturing company in Shawnee County looking at a capital investment of $31 million in real property as well as machinery and equipment. Over the next 5 years, they plan to hire 60 new positions. 15 of those positions do meet the minimum threshold for wages over $50,000, and they also qualified to receive the employment incentives. While the other 45 positions do not, we do still see the value in the training of a skilled workforce, therefore we'll be offering the training incentive. The economic impact for this project over the next 10 years is $240 million, and that results in the ROI of 246%. So the Topeka Board of Directors has already approved this project, and tonight we seek JEDO approval for the incentive funding amount of $272,000.
Can you describe for us a moment the capital investment? Does that just mean the cost of the purchase of the facility, or does that mean that it is going to be a new investment, new improvements to the facility?
It'll be new improvements to the facility as well as new equipment and machinery.
Okay. Other questions? Can we talk about the employment incentive and how we calculate that? Because I recognize that that's kind of varies when we look at this project versus the next project we're going to look at.
Sure. So when the numbers were talked about for the incentives that we'll be offering, the threshold was 50,000. So with talking with the company, 15 of those do meet or above the 50,000. And again, the other 45 do not meet those, but we still see the importance of the investment in training dollars going towards those individuals. And so we want to provide that incentive to the company.
Okay. Any questions about that? At this time, is there a motion to approve the incentive funding proposal for Project Oriole?
I'll move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Mays. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Banks. If we could have a roll call vote.
Commissioners Cook,
Yes.
Mays,
Yes.
Ribbon,
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Alcala.
Valdivia Alcala, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Valdivia Alcala, and then Councilmember Banks,
Yes.
and Councilmember Hiller,
Yes.
and Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Show that that passes. Our next item.
Item 3C, approval of incentive funding for Project Queen Bee.
Okay, this is another local manufacturing company in Shawnee County looking at a capital investment of $47.2 million. This is in both real property as well as machinery and equipment. Over the next 5 years, they plan to hire 182 new positions. We are proud to note that these positions range from 60 to 120,000 per year, which qualify for the employment and the training incentive. Listed here on this slide is the average, including compensation and benefits. The economic impact for this project over the next 10 years is $1.3 billion, with a ROI of 1,782%. The Go Topeka Board of Directors Executive Committee has approved this project, and tonight we're seeking JEDO approval for the incentive funding amount of $1,590,400.
Questions regarding this project? Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you. It's been a while since I've asked this question, but we on the city side are working hard to develop more appropriately priced housing in the city. For a long time anyway, the report from JEDO staff was that we couldn't ask the employers to tell us how many of their employees lived in the city or lived in Shawnee County. But we did develop a program whereby those companies were to help us market our communities. Can you describe what's happening these days? And
Sure. It varies with company depending on what their HR is providing. It is written into the contract of these incentive agreements that there is push towards their employees to live in Shawnee County. Right now, it's just because they're working in Shawnee County. But they're offering things like education about Choose Topeka, whether they create their own videos to use for the hiring process or any other kind of collateral. We are checking in with them and we're pulling that from them on their annual verification process.
thank you. That's important.
Other questions? Again, on the employment incentive, this is a much higher amount than Project Oriole of $1,227,000, and that is really looking at the threshold of the amount of the income. Again,
Correct. That's the largest contributing factor is the amount of jobs and the scale of wages.
okay. And I might note, I did not note previously, but on this one as well, these are paid out as performance-based.
Correct. Correct. So every year there is, it's not so much an audit verification process that they have to prove that they have hired, that they've spent what they said, and then a check is cut and reimbursed for that amount that was allotted and detailed in the contract, which again will be brought at a later date. So it'll have more details in the contract once we bring that back to JEDO.
Okay. Any questions? Is there a motion?
Chair,
Yes.
what is the formula used to get these numbers, the total economic impact numbers?
So it's a software that actually has the formula already calculated for us. What we're putting in is the industry, the capital investment, the cost for that specific industry, and then it generates it for us. So we're putting in the wages, we're putting in the amount of wages, the number of jobs, all of that. And so it takes all of that into account, and that's what's used to generate the ROI and the economic impact.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Mays?
So, thank you. These are eye-popping numbers. And so, by approving this today, how are we sure that we're going to have this project come to fruition? Or is this a step in the process?
This is something that we had to take to executive committee to approve so that we could get it in front of JEDO tonight, because they are moving fast and they're moving quickly and they want to move now. So that's why it was kind of added last minute to the agenda, because they are ready. And so we wanted to make sure we got it and didn't have to wait another 3 months to bring it to JEDO.
Okay. Well, I'm ready.
Okay.
So I'll move that we approve.
Is there a second? Or Councilwoman Ortiz, did you? Yes,
I'll second.
absolutely.
If I can find my mic here. Ashley, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm looking on here and it's saying that all new jobs will qualify for training incentives. Is that, so once they pass the training process and,
So how that works
Yeah.
is it's basically a training bank. So since they are new positions, that qualifies for an allotted amount that they can put into a training bank. After they have to print new material, they have to do specialized training, they have to do certifications or anything like that, then they submit those receipts to us, and then we reimburse out of that training bank of theirs.
so is it like one per person then?
Each person is allotted a specific amount, yep, for every
Okay.
net new position.
So what if they go through more than one training? Does that count? Or is it just one training per person period?
Well, it's a specific amount for one position. So if one person is going through multiple, they can submit those receipts.
Okay, on different, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Before we go to a vote, is there any other discussion? Seeing none, might note the motion made by Commissioner Mays, second by Councilmember Ortiz. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioners Cook,
Yes.
Mays,
Yes.
Rippon,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Valdivia Akula,
Yes.
Council Members Banks,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Ortiz.
Yes.
Show that it passes. Our next item.
Item 4A, presentation of the funds for socially and economically disadvantaged individuals.
Good evening, board members. Rich Eckert, County Counselor. We're going to talk about a little bit of the law tonight, so if anybody wanted to start the 4-minute timer, I would not be insulted. My charge was to talk about how we dispense our funds for socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. So the short story is I do not think we need to change our language, but my recommendation is that legal staff of both the city and the county stay on top of this issue and work with Go Topeka closely to watch how we're spending that money and make sure that we stay in compliance with the law. So just as a brief reminder, our interlocal agreement, and that is the agreement between the city and the county, is the first bullet point, and it states that not less than 10% will be targeted to support economic development for socially and economically disadvantaged individuals and/or business enterprises. So the key phrase here that we're going to be looking at is will be targeted. And then, of course, there's another definition in there that talks about urban economic development programs related to youth employment and the rehab of blighted, derelict, and underutilized facilities, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't really apply to what we're talking about today, but I did want to include it in there. So that's the base language of our agreement between the city and the county. So when you go to the agreement that JEDO has with Go Topeka, the language is somewhat similar, and it says 10% of the funds shall be used for purposes identified in the interlocal agreement relating to the same category. And then the second bullet point is Go Topeka shall create and retain a minority and a women business development advisory council with the responsibility of approving these budgets. So that's kind of how it's set up. So what caused the question to be asked last week? And it was it was a huge United States Supreme Court case that changed how we're going to think about these things going forward. And that case is called Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard. And it is important to know that this was an education case. It was not a labor case. It wasn't a contracts case. but some of the things that were said in this case certainly can have application to the rest of how we think the United States Supreme Court is going to view these things going forward. And basically, this was a case brought by Asian American and white applicants who applied to Harvard and felt that they were discriminated against in favor of Black, Hispanic, and Native American applicants. And here we're dealing with not only the United States Constitution, but Title VI, which again, Title VI doesn't apply to what we're doing. So the United States Supreme Court held that it is unconstitutional for colleges and universities to consider race as a factor. And that was a change because several, 20, 30 years ago, the Supreme Court had a case where it said that you could use race as a factor as long as it wasn't a determinative element. And now the Supreme Court has walked that back as well. That was followed up shortly thereafter by this case I cite, Muldrow versus City of St. Louis. And when you read it or you get a synopsis of it, you might wonder why I'm bringing it up. But it is a Title VII case, which does apply to some of the things that we're doing here. And in that case, an employee was moved out of their position to a different position, a white female, and her pay stayed the same, her rank stayed the same, her hours stayed the same, the terms of her employment stayed the same. So how could she have a case, you wonder? And in fact, she lost at every single level until they got to the Supreme Court. And then in a bit of a change, they said that you just have to have some harm. We don't know what that means, except we're pretty sure that this opinion probably caused a couple thousand lawyers to have new jobs for the next 10 years while we sort this out. But it has made this, what it does is it moves the threshold for where lawsuits can go through to a jury trial. It has lowered that level. So I wanted to bring that forward. So what is the impact on private employers? And again, we're dealing again with Title VII, and I have 3 bullet points here. And this doesn't change. These bullet points have been the same. What we're talking about is how we're going to interpret these going forward. And I'll just read the first one because it's the one that we're most likely to deal with, is that employers cannot consider race, sex, religion, national origin, or color in any employment decisions. So what's happened since? We have AG from 13 states, including Kansas, and a United States Senator warning business leaders about the risks associated with their DEI programs. Now, DEI programs is not really what we're talking about tonight and what our program is, but it's close, right? You can see it in the same neighborhood. So that's where the law is moving right now and how we're going to deal with these DEI programs. Now, of course, attorney generals on the other side in 21 states sent a letter underscoring the legality and necessity of DEI initiatives. And I point that out that there are 2 sides to this, even if we have a Supreme Court ruling. So this isn't, if you're looking for a one-sided legal rant from me, you're not going to get it. Some of this stuff has simply not been settled yet. So, as you can imagine, after the Harvard fallout, lawsuits have been filed left and right. And I put a couple of these out here. The American Alliance for Equal Rights has sued the Fearless Fund. They sued on the basis of discrimination of the race in making and enforcement of contracts. Section 1981 has also been used to challenge DEI in our employment decisions. And I point out that how serious this matter is being taken countrywide. 25 publicly traded companies have received shareholder letters from the people who own the stock, claiming that DEI programs have illegally caused their stock value to go down. And again, that same advocacy firm, America First Legal, they're pressuring on hiring practices, they're pressuring our United States EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, about the corporations I listed here. And these are all companies that we know. Kellogg's, Macy's, Hershey, Alaska Airlines. So the lawsuits have been filed. I've already mentioned the Fearless Fund. We have lawsuits that are going after law firms. We have lawsuits going after employers like Nordstrom. And it's coming everywhere. So here's a list of companies that have on their own, without lawsuits and without letters of demand, have walked back some of their programs. And again, companies that we all know and shop at, and they're here, some of them are here in Topeka. I'm not going to go through these. If anyone would like to talk to me about it afterward, I'd be glad to. So what causes a program like ours to be risky? And the risk is this, is when it confers a preference on certain individuals. And that preference is given to a legally protected group, race, color, religion, national origin, or sex. But note what's not on here. What's not on here is based upon income, not based upon your economics, right? You can still discriminate, and I use that word legally, not in the way that everyday people use it. You can still discriminate based upon your economic status. So if we had a program underneath our program, our economically disadvantaged, where we spent our money helping, explicitly saying that we're going to help economically disadvantaged individuals or businesses, that's completely legal. So what kind of preferences are we talking about? Preference could be anything: job promotion, pay raises, how a company hires, how they don't hire, all that sort of thing comes to mind. So again, so what is permissible? What can we do? And again, I write this, I had my staff help me write this. This is what we think today. I'm not going to tell you that this is going to be true 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, but this is what we feel that will pass muster today. And ultimately, this is why I recommend no change to our language, but we need to monitor how we work in the future. You can still value diversity. You can still improve and broaden recruiting efforts to ensure a diverse workforce or diverse applicant pool. You can still maintain outreach to diverse networks. You can still support community organizations that are focused on inclusion and their efforts and their issues. What we must do is avoid quotas and eligibility requirements that are based on race or other protected categories. And again, income level, economics, that is not a protected category. So how does this all work? And this is kind of where it gets a little legalese. So if you wanted to read your phone here, that would be fine. But what we talk about is when you look at whether a statute, an ordinance, or anything like that is constitutional, there are two ways that you can have a problem. And we call those facial challenges and as applied challenges. And the shorthand is that a law is so bad that you can look at it and instantly know that law is unconstitutional no matter how you use it. There's no application that would work, right? And that's not really what we have with our situation. But the second way something can be found unconstitutional, you can say that that statute as written is fine, but the way this particular government is interpreting it and using it, that's unconstitutional. So as that statute is applied to the community, you could have a problem. And that's where we're at. How are we going to use the language that's in our contracts? And that's why I think that while we don't have to change the language, we do have to watch how our third-party contractor applies their contractual obligation to us and how that money has spent. So my recommendation, again, is not to amend the language, but we need to monitor how the funds are expended. And I believe that the legal staffs of both the county and the city provide training to any of the entities going forward. It doesn't just have to be Topeka. It could be whoever. But we're available to provide training, watch how the money is spent, and we encourage all the entities, particularly Topeka, but anyone going forward who might do this, to be in contact with these two legal departments. So, Commissioner Cook, that kind of sums up, I think, the charge that you gave me in answering the question from last quarter.
Yes. Thank you very much. Are there questions? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. First, I'd like to make a comment. I think that anybody that really knows the history of this country knows that that's an inane decision by the Supreme Court. Again, this is a comment, not towards you. We know the history of the country. We know the level of inequity in this country. We know the racism in this country. So there's that. But at any rate, if we could look at that slide, you said that you were going, can somebody pull back that slide? To where training. facial training of staff. I want to understand what that might, the training that you're talking about that will happen, what might that look like, just so we get some edification on that.
Well, there's another slide on here. All of a sudden, I'm not driving. But there's another slide on there that goes through what's permissible. And let me see if so this slide here tells us, we know right now that these things are legal and will pass muster. So I think that you get with the vendor and we probably go through their list. What are you doing? Where's the money going? Who have you paid and who do you plan to pay? And we go through there, and if it's economically disadvantaged, we don't have to look any further. That one's absolutely legal, and that one will be legal going forward. We know that. So then we do have to look closely on socially disadvantaged. And if as long as we stay within those 5 bullet points that I wrote up there, that I put up there, then we're fine. Now, I'm not going to tell you that 2 reasonable people can't disagree on how to interpret those bullet points. They will. People will disagree. But I think we have a good working relationship with Topeka, both legal departments, and I think we just bear down and work through it.
Okay, and this is more curiosity, but does that mean now on forms that would be filled out and not knowing what these forms look like for any of these opportunities for monies or funding with the economically disadvantaged, does that mean that the race and ethnicity is going to be starting to get taken off of there? Is there any indication of that?
That's a good question. At this point in time, I would not recommend that. I would recommend that we keep that actually to protect ourselves, to make sure that you can pay attention to this stuff, but in order to make sure that we are staying on the right side of the law, we still need to know that information. So no, I would not recommend that we differ or differentiate how we've been doing that in the past. And there's no case that says that we can't keep that anyway. The United States Census, we fill that out.
Right. I mean, that's true, but then we've just had the Supreme Court case, so who knows what the free-for-all is going to be after
I think the Supreme Court will be the first to tell you that holding was very narrow in that it applied to educational institutions.
Mm-hmm. And you're talking the majority Title VII.
And we're talking about that in contracts.
In contracts. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? I want to thank you for the research that you and your staff did in bringing this to us. I think this is a very relevant and important piece for us to be looking at. So at this time, though, you are not making any recommendations for us to change the language contained within the contract between the city and the county?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. I appreciate it. Our next item.
Item 4B, a presentation on Washburn Tech East second floor build out, presented by Scott Smathers, Dean of Washburn Tech.
Hello. Well, I am not Scott Smathers, but I am here to present this idea to you. And this may be a unique experience. It is for me too. But we are here to ask for your permission to spend some of our own dollars on a building that you own. And so we are, last year during the legislative session, our technical college, our technical school at Washburn University received an allocation of $1.5 million for capital investment funds at Washburn Tech. And after a review of our programs and areas that we needed to grow and areas where we thought there was extreme need, we are asking today to invest those monies at Washburn Tech East. And so I have a short presentation that I would like to go over just to make sure that I can talk about Washburn Tech in general. Washburn Tech, we have about 30 programs that are focused on preparing the workforce of the future. We serve almost 1,200 students. About 60% of those students are high school students, and our campus is growing. We also work with adult ed students, helping with English language acquisition and earning their high school equivalency degree. We do have 6 locations across our community. Of course, our primary location is on Huntoon Street out in western Topeka. We have a cosmetology school that's at 29th and Kansas Boulevard. Or Kansas Avenue. We have our East Campus, of course, that is at 21st between Adams and California, and that's the location we're talking about today. We also serve military personnel at Fort Riley as we prepare them for their transition from military life to their civilian life. We are at the Topeka Correctional Facility, and we are also at the Kansas Juvenile Correctional Complex. And we have been serving those corrections institutions for a number of years. But what do we do at Washburn Tech East? At Washburn Tech East, right now, we provide a high school equivalency degree. We have English language acquisition. We do our CDL program. We do have our CNA, CMA, and HHA designations and programs at that campus. We have electrical, industrial production technology, and plumbing. And several of those programs we've added in just the last few years. And so we are expanding. And some of you were here when we built that building, and you will remember that when we built that building, we finished the first floor with the dream and goal of eventually finishing the second floor as a flexible classroom space so that we could expand our programs and serve more students. And so that is what I am here today to talk with you about. I do want to talk about what we do in the community. In addition to that, we co-sponsor citizenship classes. We are a community polling place, which we're very proud of. We have hosted the Mexican consulate twice, the police department, Topeka Police Department listening session for the community, and we've hosted the city of Topeka for informative sessions and Spanish-speaking vendor workshop. So our proposed project was in your packet. I don't want to go into a lot of details. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer questions. Or someone that has been working on this project will be happy to answer questions. Oh, do they? I think it's in their packets. It's not? Oh, I'm sorry. We'll go back. Where'd it go? Previous. There we go. No, they'll go back. No. Okay. Sorry. That's okay. I'm sorry. For some reason, I thought you had the slides. I apologize for that. Last viewed. Okay, I can just click on them. Leave it right there. Yeah. Okay. No. Thank you. So the proposed project is for the second floor of Washburn Tech East. It has classrooms, meeting rooms, and student areas. We will do some minor first floor enhancements as part of the project. The projected cost and investment in that facility is $1.2 million, and we are planning to use Kelly Construction. And the way we've designed this is really to be as flexible as possible because over time, the needs and the programs will change. And we need to be able to change the space to be able to meet those needs. And then finally, let's see if I can figure out how to work this. I'm at the end of my presentation. We are thrilled to be able to present this to you today, to be able to invest in our community, to be able to invest in such an important project. As we started this many years ago, and we are expanding and look forward to answering any questions that you might have.
Before we begin, I might note, Dr. Mazurchuk, I'm very excited to hear that you are wanting to spend or invest $1.2 million into our building, and so expanding these projects is great.
It's a good partnership, don't you think?
Absolutely. Can you talk to us a little bit about what are some of the programs that we might expect to be on the second floor of Washburn Tech East?
Okay, so this is where I'm going to call up our Dean Smathers, and I will tell you that we are anticipating, we have some early programs that we will start with, but that please know that it will just be how we begin. It doesn't mean that that's what we might be doing in a couple of years or even when we get started, because it will depend upon what the needs are. This is our new dean, Scott Smathers, whom I know many of you have met at Washburn Tech. Do you want to answer that question?
Sure. We're going to start out by expanding our English language acquisition programs and also our high school equivalency programs, which is basically focused on GED. So they've already been expanding. We've been operating in the evenings already with some classes. And so that's where we'll start, as President Mazachek said, as the opportunity and additional resources become available. Assuming they become available, then we will look at additional programs based off the demand of the market.
Questions for President Mazachek or Dean Smathers? Okay. I know this is listed as a presentation item. County Councilor Eckert, we don't need to take any action or vote on this, do we? Or do we need to approve the investment of Washburn University into our building?
I don't believe so. This is not an action item.
Okay. So Mike, just know, and again, I'm very excited about seeing the expansion and looking at the investment and our timeline. What is the timeline for construction? And that might be a Dean Smathers question again, or?
Well, actually, I can answer this. We have a meeting, depending on how this evening went, we have a meeting on Friday morning to begin our planning, and we will begin work as soon as we possibly can.
I guess I should know, is there any opposition to Washburn University? I don't see any. I think you've got all green lights.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for your support. We look forward to showing you the new space when it's complete.
All right, sounds great. Thank you. Thank you, President Mazachek. Our next item?
Item 4C, the Finance Committee's project list update.
We'll get to you eventually, Molly.
No. Thank you. Under the interlocal agreement, the JEDO Finance Committee, which is comprised of the Public Works Directors and Finance Directors, is tasked with providing you with a project update that was provided to the clerk. It's in your packets. I will just tell you that there has been unprecedented amount of inflation in costs from when those projects were initially budgeted back in 2016 for the ballot question list. We adjusted all those last September. The city has made no changes in the prioritization of its projects since last year. We ran our projections at 2%, 4%, and 6%. At 2%, which is the most conservative, we would have a shortfall of approximately $16.7 million on our estimated project budgets, and at the most ambitious rate of 6%, we would still have a 3.2% shortfall. The county ran their projections at 1%, 2.5%, and 4%. The most conservative projection results in a shortfall of $5 million, whereas their most optimistic projection of 4% results in a surplus of $5 million. The city of Topeka completed the 12th Street project this last year, and we are in design on Topeka 15th to 21st, construction for 25 and 26, and on the 21st of May, the design contract for the 12th, or for Huntoon, will be in front of the governing body. So with that, I will gladly stand for any questions. Director Niehaus is also here from the county if you have any questions about county projects.
Questions? Just with the budgetary shortfall, looking at these issues that we have listed, what happens if, do we have a prioritization of what projects may not be completed? Or is it that the governing bodies would have to put in the remainder amount of whatever is left outstanding to make these projects complete?
So, excellent question, Commissioner, and it is entirely up to the policymaking bodies in terms of, do they want to change the scope, reduce the scope of projects to be able to complete the projects, or do they want to leave off a project, or do they want to supplement funding? So all three of those options are available.
I think that the largest project for the county is the expansion of northern Shawnee County, looking at Rochester Road and that area going from the Walmart, Dillon's area up towards the high school. And that's our most ambitious project, I think. Is that accurate? Seeing Kurt Niehaus shake his head, yes. But I know that the city has a number of projects listed. So how do you anticipate, is this going to be a discussion on a city council level where you would prioritize, this is what we can do with these funds, this is what we can't do, and then come back to JEDO with recommendations?
So on the council level, as we get into design on projects, my intent is to go in front of the governing body and say, on this particular project, here are some options, right? If we can do a section with the mill and overlay as opposed to full depth reconstruction, or if we want to just focus on the street and leave the other amenities out, which would include shared use paths, sidewalks, lighting, because when we put our project budgets together, we did include all of the complete streets items. So there's an option there in terms of the council to make its decision in terms of how it wants to change the scope. And then, of course, ultimately it would be each entity's governing body would make a decision whether or not they wanted to omit a project if that's the route that they wanted to go, if they wanted to keep the scope, full scope, and then leave projects out.
County Councilor Eckert, aren't these items listed by the interlocal agreement between the city and the county?
They were listed, more importantly, they were listed on the sales tax ballot question.
Right.
And you'll hear some people in the community say that the sales tax ballot question is a promise that needs to be kept. But this happens. There are shortfalls, and other times there is a surplus. And so when Braxton says that he talks about the 3 different choices that you have, that's pretty accurate. That is accurate. The problem would become is if we killed a project and then replaced it with several other projects, then I think that would be problematic. I think what the best thing to do is to consider the scope.
Questions for Braxton, Niehaus, or Eckert? Councilwoman Ortiz.
How short are we?
So again, using the projections of 2%, if we have flat sales tax growth at 2%, we're $16.7 million short for being able to fund the projects at the current scope, which was inclusive of stormwater and all the complete streets items. At the most aggressive, optimistic rate of 6% of future sales tax growth, we're $3.2 million short.
At the time that this was placed on the ballot and when the time of the interlocal agreement between the city and the county, we had contemplated things such as sales tax on food. If the legislature was to eliminate sales tax on food, that would greatly reduce the amount of sales tax that we would receive, correct?
No.
Significantly, yes. The shortfalls that I'm talking about would skyrocket.
It doesn't affect local sales tax.
Okay, it does not affect local sales tax?
It's only the state's portion.
As of yet, they have not reached down to
Right.
our sales taxes on food.
Would they have the legislative ability to do that?
I believe they would.
Yeah.
They have total control of taxation.
So if the state was to eliminate all sales tax on food, then our projected amount versus our actual amount would be completely out of line.
It would be very much impacted, yes.
Correct.
And at that point, then we would have to look at elimination of projects.
Your mic, please.
Or greatly reducing.
Microphone.
Or greatly reducing the scope of the projects.
And Mr. Ecker, make sure the green light's on for you, too. So, all right,
I mean, it is.
thank you. All right. Other, Councilwoman Hiller.
Just a question, well, first a compliment, because I know that there'd been input from JEDO members that we needed to be doing this review periodically, and so it's good to have this on the agenda. Given the tremendous swing in what these projections are considering, how often should we bring this back? It seems that just from the discussion today, bringing it back here is a good check and balance for each unit of government to have a look at it again as well.
Yes, ma'am. We're required under the interlocal agreement to provide you every May with the updated project list.
So just once a year?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just wondered if perhaps 6 months from now would be a good time to look at it again. or whatever is the best time of year.
That would be the September meeting, perhaps, or the December?
Probably December.
All right.
I agree. Good idea.
The chair can put that on the agenda at
Needs that.
the
Yeah.
chair's leisure.
Okay. Are there other questions? I guess before we would let you go, are there other things that we should have on our radar from a public works standpoint, or things that you're looking at from a public works standpoint as it relates to these JEDO sales tax dollars?
I've already touched on the most significant ones, which is completion of 12th Street in design for Topeka 15th to 21st, as well as we will be shortly, assuming the council approves the design and engineering contract for Huntoon, we'll be moving forward with some public engagement on that.
Kurt, from a county perspective, is there anything additional that you might have to add?
Good evening, everyone. Kurt Neaus, Director of Public Works. You know, we don't have as many projects as the city of Topeka, so I think we're in a slightly better position as far as our road projects go. We are presently working on our 46th Street project, which goes from Fielding to Rochester. We are in the process right now of moving utilities and buying right-of-way. We anticipate having a letting either late this year or early next year. We've obviously, as Braxton said, the difference between a 2015 estimate and today's estimate is significantly different. Some of that is because of complete streets, and that's not a complaint about complete streets. One of the things that we've learned on our projects is if we build sidewalks or multi-use paths, people use them. So they're a great addition to our suburban projects. We have the final project, which is Rochester Road, which Commissioner Cook talked about. It's a very aggressive and 3-mile project that will probably have to be constructed over a 3-year period. Possibly late this year, I hope to get a consultant on board, because the public interaction for that project will be significant. And we want to be successful in this project. And I think a good part of that success will be interacting with the public. I mean, we have very limited right-of-way. We have homes relatively close to the street. We have a significant number of entrances off of Rochester. We envision possibly a small roundabout at 35th Street, possibly a roundabout at 50th near the high school. So there are a number of things that we're thinking about, and we're always watching the money. And I'm working with Audit Finance regularly to make certain that the funds appear to be available for our projects. And then don't forget, Shawnee County has a bridge portion of our allocation. And just like road projects, the cost to build a bridge, the cost to rehabilitate a bridge has gone up proportionally. So with that, unless you have specific questions, I look forward to them.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. This is more a comment about your public input sessions that you were hoping for. I think that that is a good idea. I don't know if you tracked what went on last year with the whole zoning debacle, with the zoning change where the Walnut Grove folks in that area did not want the zoning change because of flooding, cramped quarters with the new housing. At any rate, it passed, bottom line. But one of their main concerns is how congested everything is. And there was an email that just came to Braxton and I today that Braxton is passing on to the Department of Transportation, KDOT, because the work that they're doing is impacting Rochester and the side streets and Topeka Boulevard and all of this. So I think it's going to be of utmost importance, whether it's a combination of city residents and county, whatever the case may be, it's going to be important to have really, I would say more than one meeting to present the changes that are anticipated coming down the pike, because that is part of my city council district. Thank you.
We would anticipate on the Rochester project to have many more than one public interaction session. You bet.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you very much, Braxton and Kurt, for being here. And then we'll look forward to having an update in the December meeting. Our next item.
Item 4D, Go Topeka Quarterly Update.
We have a guest on Zoom that is unable to hear, so I just wanted to make sure city staff knew that before we get started. But I will open up our quarterly report. Of course, you all have our written quarterly report, which is pretty robust in your packets, that is hot off the press and just was delivered 7 days ago. So because of that and how our meetings sometimes fall right in line with those reports, we will only share kind of new and information that's not in that report. So we may have some abbreviated slides from the team tonight. But I did want to share our dashboard. Of course, this is just for the first 3 months of the year, so the numbers are pretty small here. Of course, tonight you've approved the addition of 250 more jobs to that 7. The 7 there obviously is comes from our small business incentive program, and there will be more information about that later, so I don't want to steal Stephanie's thunder. But just wanted to make sure that we have this in front of you, as we promised we would report these metrics on a quarterly basis. So before I pass it off to the rest of the team, I would stand for any questions on this overview dashboard, and then let us keep proceeding with our report.
Questions for Molly? Seeing none? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Stephanie Moran, Senior Vice President of Innovation for Go Topeka. I'll give a quick update on Innovation Center. I actually have guests online from BioRealty. Stan Wenzel and Douglas Cornish are on the line and will be available to help answer questions as we go through the presentation. All right. So giving an update on where we are from the last JEDO meeting. So we've had some items that have been in progress and been working on, recently completed. So confirmed the economic viability of the phased project approach. BioRealty has all of their financing now in place. They have identified their senior lender. They have selected that lender, signed term sheets, and are now in committee approval on that. They have identified their tax credit purchase agreements, and those are ready to execute as well. The leases for tenants, the 3 that we've discussed in previous meetings, are all drafted and out with the respective tenants, are in negotiation. And then from a design, those have been separated into 2 different engagements, and both contracts are updated and ready to execute as well. As far as the incentive agreement, we are on this, it notes 1 item in negotiation and 1 issue to resolve. The item that was in negotiation has actually been resolved since we've sent these slides over. So we're down to 1 issue that we're currently working on resolving for that agreement, and hope to bring that to you soon. I'll go through that here as we go into the next slides. I will pause for a moment to see if BioRealty wants to add anything to that before I move into the next slide. Okay, all right. So as we go into a couple of items. So as we came out of that February JEDO meeting, there were a couple of things that changed that have caused a little bit of delay on the incentive agreement and some of the things that we're doing. So I just wanted to provide an update on that. Initially, as we went into the February JEDO meeting, it was understood or thought that the general contractor, the GMAX, would be a 65 to 70% complete drawings to be able to start that, to finalize those costs and to start with the GMAX contract. Due to rising costs, as we've just heard in other presentations, supply chain issues, those types of things, the general contractor is now requiring 90% complete design drawings before they'll go to GMAX contract to make sure that we are really solid on those costs. What that's done is add 3 months of additional time because we've got to make those design drawings be more complete. It's also added $350,000 for BioRealty on the upfront side, where that expense would have come later in the process. The other item we're talking about is the length of time it would take to resolve these incentive and key agreements. So the incentive agreement, like I said, we've resolved down to one issue. One of the big things was the flexibility on the incentive payments. We wanted to make sure that we were in a solid position on where Go Topeka was committed to those funds. And so we've actually been able to solve that through lender selection and a revised lender agreement. Rich Eckert was very helpful in helping us kind of resolve that issue, so we appreciate that. And then the leases, one of the tenants has requested a material change versus their signed LOI, but BioRealty is confident that they will resolve that. It's just taking a little bit of extra time from what they had envisioned. Again, I'll pause for a moment for BioRealty to see if there's any additional comments they want to make before I proceed.
Stephanie, before we do that, definition GMAX?
The general contractor.
Yeah, guaranteed maximum price contract. So we want a construction contract that has a guaranteed price to it, so we do not have surprises once we let that general contract go.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we all are on the same page, and so the public is watching and they want to know what a GMAX is. Now they do.
Okay.
Thank you.
And just to add some color to what Stephanie said, I mean, we're kind of laying out, stuff that is new, but there's also been some good news that's new. One is, even though our GMAX will be delayed a little bit, we still can accelerate, the asbestos abatement, lead-based paint survey, and some of that work. So, and that takes 8 weeks to do anyway. So there's some things we have to do, what we can do prior to that GMAX. And then secondly, we're also finding some potential opportunities for early occupancy of tenants that we'll talk about in a minute.
Any other questions before we proceed?
Questions? Okay.
Okay. All right, so then kind of going into our next slide here. Okay, so as we've talked about, the key agreements, we're close to finalizing those. The incentives agreement and what that project start date is really kind of our one outstanding issue. And that's really driven off of this GMAX contract extending further out than what we had expected. So we're working with BioRealty and trying to come up with a creative solution on how we can get that project start date nailed down while also starting. And we'll talk about that here with the asbestos abatement and a couple of those things. The plug and play lease was sent to them in March, and again, we're working through those negotiations with that tenant. Go Topeka, we've received our draft and are reviewing with council, and then the lab tenant has their lease. They are reviewing that as well. So we're hoping to wrap up these leases here very shortly so that we can get things moving. And we noted the lender agreements are complete and pending kind of these key agreements above. What that does next for the timeline, the architect and design release, as we were talking about, we're looking at about 4 to 5 months to complete that, but we're looking at some options on the back end to try and expedite construction once that gets started. Asbestos abatement and the lead-based paint remediation could initiate still by 7/1, and that will take approximately 8 weeks to complete. Those two would go in tandem while we're still working on GMAX contract final pricing, getting it to that 90%. We can also be working on permits for demo and construction. We are looking at about a 1-year completion once construction starts. However, BioRealty's already been in conversations with some of our local officials here to see if we can do certificates of occupancy by space instead of for the whole project, which would allow tenants to be in spaces potentially 3 to 4 months earlier, thus shortening the timeline to have people actually inhabiting that facility. And I will open back up for questions and with BioRealty for any questions.
Questions? Okay.
All right. All right. If no further questions, then I will move into my next topic, which is our K-State 105.
Councilwoman Hiller?
Oh, sorry.
It's a question, only a request.
Yes.
Sounds like you've been working on this up until this morning or whatever, but could we have copies of the slides that are here today?
Yes, absolutely. And what I can do is, because this is coming down to kind of a tight time frame, I can provide updates on a regular basis as these items are kind of finalized and resolved to all members.
That would be good. This one in particular kind of pulled together what I couldn't really keep up with.
Yeah.
on notes, so.
It's been moving at a very rapid pace. Like I said, we had slides changing even as of last night today, so there's been multiple conversations taking place.
I think it would be very helpful if we had emails going out to all members, again, as the progress and where the status is as we move forward.
I can absolutely do that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, moving into my next item, I wanted to provide a quick update on our K-State 105 partnership. As you might recall, Go Topeka is the urban pilot partner as part of K-State's Economic Development Prosperity Plan for all 105 counties in Kansas. As we're working through this program with them, we've actually recently been awarded funding in the amount of $315,000 to help support several initiatives that we have going. So the Plug and Play partnership will actually loop in Plug and Play, Go Topeka, and Kansas State. We're actually already seeing a lot of great traction out of that. So out of our current batch of startups, we have 27, 11 ag tech, and 16 animal health companies in the current batch. I have meetings with 7 of them scheduled either this week or into early next week, connecting them with K-State for different pilot research and development and or other opportunities to advance their research through like vet med, agronomy, and other sectors through K-State. So it's exciting to see that many levels of partnership taking place just in a very short period of time. With that technical support for these startups will be covered as part of this partnership, a part of this $315,000. So as we engage those university partners, if we are to do a pilot study with, say, the vet med hospital, or we do some R&D through the agronomy department, these dollars will help cover those expenditures for these startups. Again, making it really attractive for Topeka to be at home for them in the future. We've already done one of these programs with a startup from the previous batch, and she will be here for the Plug and Play Expo in June, and we will have her as part of a panel with K-State explaining how that partnership worked and how that's been beneficial to her and her company. The other thing that this is helping to support is the community asset mapping. So one of the things that we really want to do is build a strong entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Topeka for our small businesses, for our entrepreneurs and innovators in the area. And so we've actually contracted with SourceLink, who is an expertise in building out these ecosystems. They are helping us to do a community asset mapping exercise. And so part of this funding covers that engagement and bringing SourceLink in. They will be here in the community June 11th, and those invitations will be going out to our different resource partners in the community, whether it's nonprofits, other business support centers, other collaborators like SBDC, Omni, different entities that we have in the community will be part of those meetings to identify what things do we have, what's working, where do we have gaps, and how do we fill those gaps. So we're really looking forward to that exercise coming up on June 11th. SourceLink will then provide us a full asset map of all of those resources and kind of how that path works for each of the entrepreneurs as they're in different stages of the journey. And then they will also provide us a report detailing the things that are potentially missing and how we might go about addressing those. As a side note, Lawrence is actually also going through this exercise almost in tandem with us. They're a couple weeks ahead of us on their project rollout. So it'll be, I think, a really strong partnership to have those two communities both going through this exercise at the same time. Kansas City already has this in place, so I think this will continue to progress throughout the state, and I think it'll really build a strong ecosystem for our small businesses and entrepreneurs.
Questions about the Kansas State 105 partnership? Thank you, Stephanie.
Perfect. And then my last item, so Plug and Play Expo I mentioned, so we've got that coming up on June 5th and 6th here in Topeka. We are really, really excited for this batch of startups. Like I said, this is the biggest batch we've had to date, 27 startups. We've got several international startups based in this particular cohort, and we've got, I think, 14 already committed to coming and are continuing to receive confirmations as those come in. I just wanted to You should have all received the invitation. If you have not, please let me know. I would like to see as many of you there as possible. We'll have funders here from our angel investors, venture groups, our university partners, BioKansas, Animal Health Corridor, folks from the legislature. So we really want to show a strong support for these startups and show them why Topeka is such a great place. And I was just going to play a real quick video about the expo here for you. Okay. That's all I've got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking forward to the expo on June 5 and 6. And so if you have not had a chance to attend, it really is very exciting. Stephanie, before you go, what are some of the things that we might see vendor-wise or people, what are some of the products or startups?
Absolutely. So a couple of the exciting ones that we've actually kind of in conversations on K-State with. One is called Landprint. They actually do analysis of the land and how to make the best use out of it for different types of crops, do different analysis. So the agronomy department at K-State's going to potentially be working with them on establishing that. They're an international company that's looking for a U.S. presence. We have Seisme, which is actually a technology for animals who are undergoing procedures. Instead of doing a wearable device, which animals tend to kick off during those procedures, it can be placed either on the table that they're working on or in the kennel that they are in after the surgery to help monitor and identify any particular health issues that might be coming up for those animals. We have different alternative proteins again. We've got sustainability products. We've got some new lab research type of technologies. So there's a lot of really exciting things as part of this. So many I can't even explain all of them, but a lot of great technologies, and it'll be really cool to see a lot of these demoed while they're here in Topeka.
Great. Any other questions? All right.
All right, thank you.
Hello, Stephanie Norwood, Director of Entrepreneurship and Small Business with Go Topeka. Before I get into my slides, I just want to say that we are celebrating our local small businesses tomorrow at our Small Business Awards, announcing some top candidates and then winners in each category. So if you did sign on to attend, thank you. And if you didn't, you will receive those updates. If you've been on Facebook, hopefully you've seen some of those promotions. We're really trying to show them some love. So that is tomorrow. Yep. So to start, here is our community health map. We did have to adjust how we're doing things a little bit. So we don't have the previous year data in this. So this is just Q1, but you can see some of the distribution points of where our incentive projects lie. So in Q1, we did approve for 17 different companies to receive incentives that included 24 different incentive projects. So some companies did take advantage of multiple. So that could have been construction and renovation and architect and design, marketing and equipment, or any variation thereof, including some of our other options. That did include about 118,000, just a little over that, total investments from our end, which is estimated to be about 386,000 of capital investment. That's an estimate based off of the numbers that they're currently providing, and we will continue to update that as they close out their projects and give us those actuals. here you can see the distribution over the district map. So this is something new we are doing per your request. So eventually we'd hopefully have that a little more overlaid with the health map as well, depending on the ability and with it still making it clearly marked. So at this time, I want to say you might not see your district represented with a red flag, but that could be that maybe you are heavy in residential versus commercial. But no matter what, if you would like, I would love to take the opportunity to work with you to come out and do an info session with your community, whether that be your NIAs or any sort of other communities that you have outreach with. I would love to connect with you if that is something you are looking for, to share some of these incentive projects and the process to apply. Here you'll see it broken down by industry. We were heavy in the accommodation and food services. And then it did go through retail trade, technical services, manufacturing. This is all just Q1 again. We are working on Q2 right now, and we're having a very good response, and we are going to be making our next set of approvals later this month. And investment by type. So you can see that equipment was our most heavily used in Q1. This is common for all industries. Everybody needs the equipment, so that's great. In Q1, we did also serve 87 individuals through different training opportunities. This included our small business council trainings, fast track, or reaching out to different boards like NODA or the Fair Lawn Merchants meetings to share about these opportunities, not only incentives, but also our other programs, but to make them all aware. We also serve 21 individuals for guidance and connection to these programs and to along their entrepreneurship journeys for our programs and our partners in the community who offer resources as well. Any questions?
Questions for Stephanie Norwood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Hiller?
I know you've been looking at this, but how do you measure what their goals are and how successful these investments were?
Absolutely, yes. We're currently working on a post-event survey that would go out to collect any sort of growth where they could let us know, have they expanded their services? Have they been able to hire new people? Are they growing out of their current space? Things like that. Right now, it's all through narrative and communication. So we have seen people who have been able to do all of those things, and that's very exciting. So hopefully we'll have more solid statistics here in the near future.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello again. Here is the current project pipeline. I'm actually, again, I don't know why I'm introducing myself after I've already been here, Director of Business Development. So handling a lot of these new business attraction projects that come in. So this is what's showing currently active as of that date. These are projects that come from the outside of our community, looking at Topeka or Shawnee County. As you can see, the top industries are advanced manufacturing, aviation, and tech. In the last JEDO meeting, we did have a site visit planned for February. We went to Kansas City. It was through KCADC, the Kansas City Area Development Council, and met with them, presented to a company, which was a distribution company, and took our team, our local broker that represents the site, along with their developer, and presented. Feedback from them that we have received is that they loved our team, they loved the presentation, loved our community, but due to their supply chain structure, they are looking at staying a little further east, so in the Kansas City region. We haven't been completely taken off yet, but we're a little too far west for them right now. So fingers crossed that they restructure their whole supply chain. So in the spring starts a lot of travel for us, and we have the opportunity to meet with other colleagues in our industry. So that allows us to meet, talk, and learn with other economic development organizations, as well as site selectors, to get an idea of what they're experiencing both nationally and internationally. So I wanted to just share some of those hot topics and trends that we're hearing a lot about. Staying at the forefront of the conversation for companies that are looking to grow into a community are things like cost of living, housing, and incentives. There's also an increasing support and noticeable benefit around regional partnerships. So a lot of the initiatives that we're involved in and the incentives that we offer, and the fact that our cost of living is about 17% lower than the national average really gives us a competitive edge, and what we're continuing to highlight about Topeka and Shawnee County being a place to do business. While the population in the U.S. isn't significantly increasing, it is steady. The U.S. is looking better than some of the other countries because of the average worker age. Places like China or India have an intensely large population, but the majority of their ages are very young or very old, and where our median age in the U.S. is about 40, so that sets us up nicely for an active workforce. Supply demands. Moving products internationally is a growing concern for the future, but the U.S. is in a position of strength from a raw materials point of view. Timelines for power availability is still a national issue and a struggle that they're seeing everywhere. But the good thing is that the costs are significantly less in the U.S., so we anticipate that we'll still see a lot of those high power need projects coming through. We don't see those going anywhere anytime soon. The cost of doing business as it relates to wages, site selectors are seeing that more companies are willing to pay more because the cost of turnover is just so expensive. So this is something that they can really take control over. And another issue that companies are trying to combat is accommodating those remote workers and getting them back into the office. So some companies have started incorporating some major amenities to their employees. One site selector even saw that an employer was offering free valet parking to all of their in-office employees, which I fully support. So those are just some of the things that we're hearing about in the economic development world.
So as you're working in the economic development world and going to conferences, post-pandemic, are we seeing a return of people to office space, or is there still a hybrid model of working from home and office space? What are we seeing?
Hybrid is really mostly, usually 3 days in the office, 2 days at home, working remote.
Okay. And then it appears in Topeka, Shawnee County that there is still quite a bit of open commercial office space. What are some of the things that Go Topeka is working on to help fill or identify where that open office space may be to get more businesses here?
Sure. So we have an area broker list that we reach out to. I know that some businesses are going to have more building available, asking them for flyers so that we can keep our database updated, because site selectors are starting to do kind of their own recon, if you will, in different communities. And so with our database that we have that shows all of our sites, all of our buildings, as long as we have all of our buildings up to date, then that'll put them in front of who they need to be.
And are we keeping track of open or vacant office space that we have in Topeka, Shawnee County?
Keeping track of and
how much, I mean, what's the percentage of occupied as opposed to unoccupied space that we might have?
That's a great question that I'd have to pull. I'd have to probably reach out to Bob Ross, who's our numbers guy now, and see if he could pull that info for us, but I'd be happy to get that.
Okay. Other questions for Ashley? All right. Thank you very much.
Hello. Trina Goss, Director of Business and Talent Initiatives. Tonight, I'm going to share with you a few things that are coming up in the next couple of months that are pretty exciting for Topeka. The state of Kansas has recognized the need to grow the population in our state with the number of large businesses that are moving into the state and jobs that need to be filled. So they have chosen to really target the boomerang talent pool, excuse me, and they're working with Kansas Tourism to launch a talent marketing campaign that is really looking at bringing boomerangs back to Topeka. They have identified states where people have moved primarily, of course, the border states of Kansas, but then also a lot of people have moved to states like South Dakota, Texas, Arkansas, Florida, and California. So in their marketing campaign, these are the states that they're planning to target. I'm going to switch to the next slide, or the website. Yeah. Okay. So Love Kansas is the marketing campaign that the state is launching. With this program, they have identified right now 16 target or pilot communities that they'll really be focused on bringing the boomerang talent pool to, and Topeka is one of them. Right now, we're in the very beginning stages of this with the state. They've put up this website. Topeka is listed under the college towns and the mid-size urban that you see on your screen. At this moment, we are working through the website to make sure that it has information that we want them to have. There are links to Visit Topeka, Choose Topeka, and the City of Topeka websites. And then just some basic information about the community. We have to have all of our changes and edits for the website to Kansas Tourism by next Wednesday. And they are hosting a launch event for this program in Manhattan on July 1st, after which we will have our own launch event somewhere in Shawnee County. And the date is not scheduled yet, where we'll really have a big party, inviting people to come, to write letters to their friends and family members who have moved away, to share information about how wonderful Topeka is to live and asking them to come back. And that's just like the baseline of what we'll be doing at this launch event. So really excited with that. Before we move on to the next thing, is there any questions about that?
Questions for Trina? All right.
The next item, and I want to make sure that it's clear, you all know that we received a grant to support childcare initiatives in Shawnee County last year. The overall grant that we received was twofold. It was $3.1 million overall. The largest portion of that was intended to expanding childcare capacity, which we're in the process of doing that. So far, we've added over 100 new childcare slots in Shawnee County, with over 300 still to come. So all of our projects are moving along very nicely. $250-ish thousand of that was intended for certain communities to do innovative things to increase the talent pool for childcare workers, to possibly increase the average pay for childcare workers, and to do other things to support needs besides additional childcare slots. So we have worked with MB Pyland and Childcare Aware to launch this Family Forward website. The Family Forward initiative will officially go live on June 5th at a ceremony at Washburn Tech. There are multiple things happening with this website that we've launched. As you see on the screen right now, you can identify if you're a business, a parent or guardian, or a job seeker. So if you're a business, you have opportunities to learn about how you can support childcare for your employees, whether it's offering subsidies or creating your own childcare facility on site, or even contributing to our childcare fund or our parent scholarship fund, which I'll talk about here in a minute. The next option is for parents, a parent or guardian. So we are working with the Topeka Community Foundation to establish a community fund, which has already been established, but now we're working on getting donors for this. And this scholarship will be for people who they need childcare for their children. They're already utilizing those benefits that are available at the state, the subsidies through DCF, but they still struggle with affording childcare. So this will be a scholarship for those families. They'll be able to receive, I believe it's $100 a month initially, and then as the fund grows, we may be able to make it more than that. Right now, in the beginning, those scholarships will be available with those childcare providers that we're supporting through the grant as well. As the fund grows, we want to expand that to other childcare providers. There will be an application that they complete that will be reviewed by Childcare Aware and the Community Foundation. And when the scholarship is awarded, it will be paid directly to the childcare provider, lessening the parent's obligation for payment to the provider. The other option we have on here is for the job seeker. So this is where we're building our talent pool. This website just went live 2 weeks ago, and we already have applicants to be a childcare worker. So that's really exciting. When an application comes through the website, it will go to Childcare Aware, who will do all of the screening, background checks, fingerprinting, everything that needs to be done. And then they can be linked to one of the providers that we're supporting through the grant. Again, as as opportunities grow, as the talent pool grows, we'll be able to focus on other providers as well. So this will become a true county-wide initiative. Any questions about this one?
Questions? Thank you very much for this information.
Yeah, thank you. The last item is also in your packet, but I wanted to call it out. The Education and Industry Summit is taking place on July 25th, next door at TPAC. We have a phenomenal keynote speaker, Mark Perna, who is a generational expert. He's a weekly Forbes contributor as it relates to workforce and education, and his message is applicable to anyone who works with young people, whether it's a parent, an educator, a employer, and he really helps people understand how they can tap into the fullest potential of the next generation of workforce. So really exciting. He'll be speaking all morning, and then we have breakout sessions in the afternoon as well. So I hope to see you all there, and share the word if you can. And that's all I have.
Any questions for Trina? All right, thank you.
Good evening, JEDO Council members. My name is Rhett Flood. I'm the Executive Director of Forge Young Talent, and our role in economic development is to attract and retain young talent to Topeka and Shawnee County. And we do that through a few different ways, mostly events and programming, and then special initiatives. One of our special initiatives that we've recently undertaken was the Topeka City Flag. As you guys know, the Topeka City Flag was adopted several years ago, and we really started that as a community pride initiative. And you can see that city flag everywhere now. We have it here in this room. We have it on T-shirts, coffee mugs, really hanging outside of houses. We have it on a lot of different products now. So we really love seeing that people have gotten behind the flag and are proud of our city and county. Kind of the final iteration of this project has been to make the Topeka City Flag an official license plate through the state of Kansas. And last year, in partnership with the Topeka Chamber, we went over to the State House and were able to get that passed to become an official license plate for the state. So after jumping through a few hoops for the state, we had to get about 300 different signatures. We had to kind of meet some criteria for them to show that there was a need for this. We completed all those in just a couple months. And then we've been working with the state to get that online and available for purchase. So I'm happy to announce that a few weeks ago, about a month ago, the Topeka flag is available for purchase as an official license plate with the state of Kansas. You can get that through the county or through the annex building as well. And we have some pictures showing here that they're already being put on vehicles in our city, in our county. I have a word that that flag, or that the license plate has already traveled as far as St. Louis and is planning to go to New Orleans and to some other places soon. So people are using it and driving around and showing their community pride all over the nation already. I wanted to share this with you tonight so you all can let your constituents know that it is available for purchase and that they can show their community pride by getting this and letting everybody know that they're from Topeka and Shawnee County. So that's all I had for you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Rhett? Thank you very much. Oh, Councilwoman Heller.
If you would go ahead and discuss the pricing, I've heard some people react really positively to this cool license plate, and then they're like, what?
Yeah, so with all specialty plates like this, there's usually a additional fund to support whatever variant programs may be. Ours is $50, which is typical with other cities in Kansas. Wichita, Salina, several others have kind of set $50 as the fee, and so we kind of just, jumped on board with that. And that is a one-time setup fee. There is an additional fee on top of the $50. That's a one-time fee that people may have issue with, but after it's set up, you won't have to pay that additional fee. The $50 fee will happen every year when you renew, though. So hopefully that clears it up.
I just wanted to draw that out because if we're prepared for that and they understand that that's a fundraiser, that part of it's to get the specialty, the license plate at all, partly that's because of specialty license plate, and then there's $50 that goes back to Forge.
Right, and that actually is spelled out
okay.
on the website. We have a really big FAQ section on gotopeka.com/ I believe it's Topeka City license plate. And it goes over all those details, the additional fees, the setup fees, how long it'll take to get, all that good stuff. So that's spelled out, and we can make sure to include that in our messaging when we're promoting it.
I thought so, and I thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure we all knew, because not everybody gets into that market, and when we understand it, we can explain it and sell it better.
Yep, and then just point them back to the website, and they can figure out the locations to purchase it and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions for Rhett? All right. Thank you, Reg.
Okay, that concludes the report from the Go Topeka team. So if there are any other questions, we would stand for those. If not,
Any other
we are
questions?
finished.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item.
Item 5, public comment.
We do have several people signed up for public comment this evening. The first person who signed up for public comment is Henry McClure.
Hi. Good evening. We better clear up the record. I have not hired you or retained you to be an attorney for me. I said that too many times at the county commission. You're probably a great attorney and a fine young man. But I'll tell you, that's the guy over there that I want to be my attorney. Now let's focus on what he said tonight. If that ain't an eye-opener, let's do it. Let's talk about the ballot. Let's go back and look at the ballot. All it says is economic development. Everything after that in the interlocal agreement is poetic license. But let's look at all those street projects that are on there. And what's really more interesting than anything is you're going to get to decide whether we're going to have a robust report or we're going to have good streets. Because that's what it's going to come down to. Now, the problem with our country right now is no matter how much evidence you put out there, if you're not on the right side of things, it doesn't matter. So I like that list of all the grants, scholarships, and gifts. I think we should start calling that Project Santa Claus. Because that wasn't on the ballot. That wasn't what the people wanted to have sales tax go to. It's a slush fund to make sure that people get reelected. Do you know what a tick does when it bites you? It sticks its head in your skin and it lets out a little, almost anesthesia. So you don't even know you've been bit. And then that tick just sucks the blood. And then all of a sudden you see you got a tick on you. But what's most interesting too tonight about the ballot is there were people that went out and made a lot of decisions, maybe to even buy real estate around those areas because look, that's going to be a road project. I know that I bought land on 37th and Gage because I thought a road was going to go through there. Well, I was misled. But it wasn't a ballot issue. But the ballot issue becomes it becomes a more bigger thing. Because if you stop and think, like your lawyer said over here, there will be an upheaval if you don't follow what the voters wanted. And no matter what today, no matter how much evidence I prove that I've been discriminated on, it doesn't matter. You got to think about this. Giving Pizza Hut a sewer, you'd have had $100 grand by now, paid back in sales tax and real estate tax. And what it's going to come down to, you guys, it's going to start coming down to income. How are we going to make money on deals that we make in town? But also, how are we going to keep the voters in line? and you start going against, you start taking all these street projects out of there, you're going to have a revolt. I'm going to help promote it because we got to take our country back. You know, to be in business is freedom. And when you've taken away my freedom to do business, and that's a shame. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker this evening is James Bolden.
The Honorable County Commissioner, Deputy Mayor, Councilmen, Commissioners. I had something I wanted to go over, but I'm going to stay within the element of today's speaks. Socioeconomically developed businesses. I was an 8A program, 2001, graduated 2013. Staying in the element. Let me do this first. Let me say this first. Excuse me. The last that I recall, when God created man, he created us to be equal. Now, I'm going to have to jump because it's so much. I had the privilege of meeting Art Fletcher. Anybody know who Art Fletcher is? Very good. The father of affirmative action. If it was not for Art Fletcher, women would not be in the position that they're in today. Very good. Art Fletcher. Before that, women were oppressed, civil rights movement. Some of the young women may not know, some of them won't sound like they do. You would still be, and it's, pardon me, kitchen in the bedroom. You wouldn't be executives today. You wouldn't be head and go to Topeka today. That's what you'd be. You crawled on the backs of the civil rights movements, the men, the black men and women that died, that fought, so that you asked to be with them. You asked to be with them. You're there. What about the black men? They've got lost. Socially, economically underdeveloped. Was that the language today? Is that acceptable? It's not acceptable with me, I'm gonna tell you that right now. What
That's
was that?
1 minute warning.
Okay. Can you give me some more time?
You keep going. You're not over yet.
I haven't even started. Socially economic developed, disadvantaged. There wasn't a program Go Topeka brought up. Didn't see a minority stand up. You pay all this money to different consulting firms when all you have to do is come and ask me. I can tell you how to do it. Wouldn't cost you nothing. Source links, consulting firms, spend all this money, and what are the results? I see nothing tonight. So let us use our God-given common sense.
All right, now we're out of time. Are you asking for an extension?
I'd love to.
Is there a motion to extend? Councilman Councilman Banks?
Motion to extend.
Okay. Is there,
How much time do you need?
I've sit here and listened all night to you guys. So if you don't want to hear me, that's fine, because, you know,
no, the question is how much time do you need?
I don't know. I don't know.
How much time are you asking for? And then we'll see where we're at.
Well, give me 5 minutes.
Okay. Second. All right. Motion made by Councilman Banks and second by Commissioner Rippon for an extension of 5 minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes.
The Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921 killed hundreds of residents, burned more than 1,250 homes, and erased years of black success. Among the worst racial terror attacks in the nation's history, as well as the government's culpability. Much bigger is a sobering kind of inheritance, the incalculable and enduring loss of what could have been, and generational wealth that might have shaped and secured the fortunes of black children and grandchildren. So let us not forget where we come from and continue to hold one another up as we endure the backlash of freedoms that we enjoy today. Now, housing and urban development, I was reviewing the internet, and it appears that Go Topeka is over that program. Now, you correct me if I'm wrong. This morning, Biden and Kamala Harris had extended $35 million to the Topeka, or Kansas, excuse me. Haven't heard anything about this. You know, my wife is ready to leave Topeka. And after today, I guess I better just join her and my friends, tell them to get the hell out of here. There's no energy. And it's because the stigma is because people like me. We don't count. We don't seem to, you know, you put the programs together, but who enforces the programs? It's a joke. I'm not going to be a joke no longer. I'm too intelligent for that. There's no contracting compliance officers. Just do what you want to do. The money I make, the county sold me a home in an auction, foreclosure. The city came and destroyed the home. This is leadership. This was way in 2001. You all may not have even been here. Karen Hiller knows what I'm talking about. So anyhow, in talking to Mr. Jackson, Sam Jackson's brother, I was told that the white man never had any intentions of helping black people. That's why he has now stolen the very program to ensure we starve and do not survive. Now, God is my witness today. He sees what's happening when nobody else, he sees it. You wonder why there's a stigma. Ask him. He'll tell you. Anyhow, I would like to, I thought today we were supposed to hear something about the 10%. Okay. The deregulation of the banks caused a fallout during the President Obama administration, bailed out the bankers, however, his constituents were hungry and homeless. Deregulation. The government deregulated the banks. Fat cats. Well, when the Lord comes, we'll see how much money will save you. When you get sick, we'll see how much money will get you well. God is my witness. He's brought me here today, and I've asked him to speak in my behalf. And I hope that I've touched some hearts today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The last individual signed up for public comment tonight is Shelley Armato. Is Shelley Armato present? Seeing not, our next item.
Item 6, a reminder of the next JEDO meetings. There will be September 11th and December 11th.
Any other comments or items to bring before the board? Seeing not, we're adjourned.